punch her, would you punch her? You're a good one.
If you could fix the economy, I'd be grateful.
Punch her right in her calcamushy is what I think.
You know, that was a very accurate thing to say now that I think about it. Yeah, she's the Alaskan governor, or was the Alaskan governor, right?
Yeah, I think she's just a freak now.
Well, once you are...
You guys know about Palin.
Sarah Palin?
Yeah, you guys know about Palin.
She's America's favorite clown.
Yes, she is now.
And she was almost our vice president.
Oh.
Now, once you are president too, I want to talk to you about insurance reform, because I had a bit of a problem with insurance this past year. In fact, it was 1 year ago at this time. 1 year ago, I was at Renovation having a remarkable time. I was having the time of my life. Greatest event in the world, Renovation. So much fun, I never bothered going near the computer. Why should I get online? You people who come to conventions, you fly 3,000 kilometers to go to a convention and play Second Life. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have fun. I want to meet people. So, on my way back to the airport, I hopped into my car, the rental car that I got onto the Autobahn, and 280 kilometers an hour. Yes, thank you, Dogo. I know that's the speed old people drive. Thank you very much. And charged on back to Frankfurt. Was there in 12 minutes. And I got into the airport, and I went down to the lounge, and I opened up my laptop, and I fired up my email, and the first thing I saw was an email. I live in a condominium. It's like a flat that you own, and it's a two-level condominium. And there's a lady who lives upstairs from me, and the email was from her, a lovely lady named Marilyn. And her email in all capital letters began with, "Emergency, your condo has flooded." I said, "Oh, well, that's nice." What was going through my mind was a biblical flood, because I live on top of a hill. I'm the highest point in the county. If my condo is flooded, there's bigger problems than my carpet being soggy.
No one's in an ark in your living room with giraffes and shit, right?
Exactly, that was what I was expecting. So I was nervous the whole way home. And I got home, the poor lady upstairs, her name was Marilyn, she burst into tears. "Oh, your place is flooded, it's all my fault." Her washing machine, which was very old, had a something of a wardrobe malfunction, you might say. Well, one of the hoses had broken while it was filling, and the water was not filling up her washing machine, it was filling up someplace else. Marilyn had gone out to putter in the garden and was planting some flowers and doing some weeding. She was out there at least an hour. It is unknown how many thousands of liters of water went down into my flat, but they do say that when they pried open my door, when the emergency call went out that there's a problem here, a small tsunami came out over their feet. Oh, great. But when I got home, I went in and it didn't seem that bad to me. There's a little puddle here, and that the carpet's a little soggy, but I'll just open all the doors and it will dry out fine. That's what everybody who has a flood says in the first 2 minutes. I called my insurance company, and they said, well, we're going to send an expert over. The expert came over and said, well, I have good news for you, and bad news. I'll give you the bad news first. The entire place is going to have to be gutted. The floor has to come out, the walls have to come out, the ceiling has to come out. We're going to take this down to concrete and bare timbers, and you're not going to be able to live here for months. And I said, what's the good news? He said, I got laid last night. I said, well, congratulations. You have any good news for me? He said, no. He said, you're fucked, son. I'm sorry. So, well, you were too, but in the good way, okay? So I had to live in a little hotel for 77 days. Funny that I know, 77 days, 6 hours, 12 minutes, actually. And they completely rebuilt my flat. Anything that had been damaged was either repaired or disposed as had to be. All new carpet, all new walls, but I actually came out slightly ahead. You see, two had been to my flat. He can tell you. It had originally been decorated in 1971. Well, back in 1971, we thought stuff looked cool. Like the wallpaper in the kitchen with the giant green and orange and yellow flowers. And the tile that kind of had the same giant green and yellow and orange flowers on it. And the stove that was the color that never existed in nature. Well, when the man came in, we call it the adjuster, the man to see what the damage is. I came in and said, "Ah, my beautiful kitchen floor. You're going to replace that, right?" He said, "Oh yes." I said, "Oh." I had a problem with the carpet in my living room. The carpet was very, very old. I put it in more than 10 years ago, and something of a speed control bump had formed in the middle of it, and it was getting bigger every day. And I kept saying, "Someday I'll fix that," but it keeps me from running down the hall right now, so maybe we'll just keep it a while. Well, I came in with the insurance guy and I said, "Oh, what's that?" And he said, "Oh, we'll replace the carpet." I said, "Oh, good." So I'm making out like a bandit here. Of course, the problem is once they replace it, I ran down the hall, tripped, fell, cracked my head, so anyway, that's a different story. But I thought everything is fine because I have insurance, you see. And I only had to pay the small copay of only like $500 or something. Now, I could afford that. What I did not know was my insurance only covered essentially the air molecules inside the flat. The actual floor, the walls, the insulation, all the stuff they actually replaced was covered by the building owner's insurance policy, the condominium association, we call it. They had a different insurance policy. Theirs had a copay of $5,000. Now, this posed a problem because I didn't have $5,000. Now, I know people are out there going, "But aren't you rich?" "Yes, she's rich. Uncle Kage has a doctorate in it. He's a scientist. He must make lots of money." Well, if you think that, you fail. It is the worst business to be in. The sciences in the United States, the market has essentially crashed. A PhD scientist cannot get anything other than a low-paying, low-profile, trivial, minimum-wage job. The only PhD-level scientists in America who are going to get anywhere are people who have three qualities. They need to be able to think on a positively godlike level. They need to be able to kiss ass. And they need to be able to give a fucking good blowjob. And I can sadly only do two of those things. So I didn't have that kind of money. So, I am the guy who helps other people. I didn't tell anyone. I did not want to tell anybody I had a predicament. I come from, you've seen my parents, I come from very self-sufficient stock, good blue-collar family. I was not going to accept any help from anybody. A friend of mine who had lost his home to a fire about 15 years ago, and whom I had helped out, I organized a fund drive to help him pay for the things he lost, called me up and said, "So how bad was the flood?" And I said, "Well, I told the story, I told you guys, they lost the carpeting, blowjob, blah, 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 all that." And he said, "Well, how short do you think you'll be?" And I said, "Well, I got a $5,000 deductible I got to worry about, plus my own deductible, about $5,500, but it's not a worry, I'll be okay." 3 weeks later, here comes an envelope with $5,000 in it and a card signed by 60 furries, 20 of whom I'd never met. Now, people say a lot about furry fandom, but God bless you people.
actually had a similar experience as far as at least the fire is concerned. How many people out there, maybe a little bit of a stretch, but have you guys heard of the city of Michigan called Detroit? I lived in Detroit. Yeah, and there's some applause for Detroit. What's wrong with you? I'm in Los Angeles now. I moved to Los Angeles. I had to get out of Detroit, not because my apartment flooded, but because of the conspiracy. There was a conspiracy in Detroit. I don't know if it was the government. It could have been aliens. But one night, when we went to sleep, they replaced all of the buildings and houses with buildings and houses that looked exactly the same as the ones they'd taken, except on fire. and then the next night, they replaced everybody I knew with people who looked and acted exactly like the people that they'd taken, except homeless and on fire. So I said, well, I'm not going to put up with this. I can't get any sex around here with people running around on fire and with no skin. It did make the clowns more sexy. The nuns were a lot more fun. But I moved out. I moved to Los Angeles. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I never did get the jokes about all of the Mexicans that would stand around the hardware stores. There was all these jokes about Mexicans standing around hardware stores. Until I moved to California, and there they were, standing around the hardware stores. I'm like, holy shit, there they are. What's the deal with this? I don't understand. And it wasn't until I actually needed to go and buy some stuff to use for our studio. God forbid you walk out of a hardware store with one board and a nail. Because they will jump on you and attack you. Labor? You want labor? We work today. Labor, and they will knock you out. And when you wake up, your daughter's pregnant, you have a new sun deck. And you don't know why. And I'm thinking, why couldn't we have Italians standing outside of McDonald's cooking? You want cooking? Cook? Why can't we have Asians standing outside of the tax preparation offices? Math? You want math? Of course, if American equal opportunity, if you have that, then you have Middle Easterners standing outside of the government buildings. Decorate? We can decorate. Oh my gosh. I was watching a news program on the birds because there's these birds down there in the Gulf of Mexico, and they are floating around because of BP. I love BP is awesome. There's a lot of theme parks in California, and I went to one of them called Knott's Farms, and there was a roller coaster sponsored by Toyota, and nobody was riding. And I love the new slogan for Toyota in the United States. Toyota, moving forward.
Excuse me, just a minute, Joe. I don't mean to interrupt, but I don't think they're getting the joke, because the problem is that the Toyotas, the brakes were failing, they couldn't stop, and the Toyotas would accelerate out of control. The Germans had the same problem, but nobody's noticed.
It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And so there was that, and we had that. I think that this whole honesty policy with these companies should extend a little BP gushing the possibilities. But they were talking about these birds.